Hello, my beautiful podcast family. Welcome back to Wednesday. Today is going to be a little bit uncomfortable for me, but that's what 2025 is about, right? About getting uncomfortable, being uncomfortable, sharing things that we normally wouldn't share or normally wouldn't talk about because it's not comfortable for us. It's scary, it's traumatic, we feel like maybe not relevant or you know, it's something that we've been through, so nobody else really needs to know about it, whatever, whatever. So today we're going to move out of that comfort zone and I'm going to talk about trauma bonding. My beautiful friend brought this up to me last week and she was like, "You need to do an episode on trauma bonding." And I was like, damn, like that's a great idea. Because what is a trauma bond really? Like, do we know what that is? Like, we throw it out there all the time, we talk about it all the time. But do we really know what a trauma bond is? What does that mean? Let's dig into it. I'm so excited. If you are new this week to Podcast Pocket Full of Sunshine, thank you for tuning in. You can email me with questions, if you need resources, if you want to be a guest on the show, if you want to write me anonymously and I read your story and just share it, be your voice, get your story out there so you can help others. I'm happy to do that as well. My email is podcastpocketfullofsunshine@gmail.com. You can also message me on the podcast Facebook page. I'm pretty responsive on that as well. So let's go. Let's get uncomfortable. Okay? I'm in an uncomfortable space today. I'm like packed in a little corner in my room. I had a medical procedure done this week, so I'm not feeling the greatest. Just praying that comes back good and clear and everything is as it needs to be. I had some biopsies done, so that's never fun. But I'm doing okay. Motrin, Tylenol, thank goodness, heating pad, all the nine. But anyway, so I've had lots of downtime this week to think about what does it really mean to be trauma bonded to somebody? And is it really a trauma bond that I have? So a trauma bond is a bond that we form with someone that has either caused trauma to us or that we share a similar trauma with, right? So that can come in many different forms. We can share trauma bonds with siblings, with parents, with aunts, uncles, cousins, brothers, boyfriends, girlfriends, whatever. My own experience, I've had tons and tons of trauma bonds through my life. I feel like, have I ever really had a real relationship? Or have they all just been trauma bonds? Actually, no, they have not all been trauma bonds, because Stockholm Syndrome is a real thing also. And the difference between a trauma bond and Stockholm Syndrome is that Stockholm Syndrome is when you actually fear for your life from your abuser. And so I have been in that situation before, one time. And I literally stayed in that relationship as long as I did because I thought if I left, he would literally find me and take me out. That was going to be the end of me. And he made that clear on multiple occasions and attempted on multiple occasions. And so now that I have really sat back and dug into this, I realized that relationship was Stockholm Syndrome 1,000%. And even up until this past year, I experienced trauma and abuse from that person. And here we are 20 years later, and it's still so real and so triggering, and just the way they continue to come back and come back and come back and try and try and try just to tear you down when they're hurting. It's but again, you have that bond with this person, that connection, whether it's a child, whether it's just that you used to have a relationship or whatever the situation may be, but the abuser attaches to you, and you cannot, with the life of you, convince them to just let you go, because they just want to hurt you. That's all they want to do. And you look at that and you're like, oh, this is so toxic. Like, this is narcissist behavior. Yes, absolutely, it is narcissist behavior. And yes, it is toxic, but it has caused you to have Stockholm syndrome, which is a fear for your life from your abuser. So, how do we fix that? How do we break free from that and stay away from that? Because I know from my own experience, I went back to that so many times in life, right? Like, you leave and then you go back, and then you leave and then you go back, because you feel this empathy for that person, and you because you have shared a similar lifestyle or a similar trauma, or because you have seen the good in this person but also the worst, and you just keep going back because you think, like, you feel sorry for them and you feel bad for them, and you're like, you're the only person that is willing to help them, like, to really be there and try to help them be a better person and not the abuser that they are. So it took me years and years to get out of that relationship, and even years and years after I was out of the relationship, I was still, still found myself in that person's cross arrows more than one time. And I learned how to not let it bother me, block the numbers, only respond if it had to do with my children. All the things that you can do to take your power back away from them. Because when they know that they can abuse you and hurt you, and they continue to do it over and over and over and over, they're doing that because they know they can. So we have to take our power back and stop it. The easiest way to do that, but the hardest way at the same time, if you are the victim, is no contact. And I know that's scary, that's crazy. And especially if you have children together, like, how do you do no contact? Like, what does that even mean? Like, can I even do that? Probably not if you have kids together. But you can only respond to that person if it is legitimately a question about visitation, the well-being of your child, or if they have to communicate with you or you have to communicate with them to let them know that you have to try to work around a different schedule because something has come up. And that's it. Don't respond to anything else. Don't acknowledge anything else. I did that for so long with my ex. I constantly would respond and respond and respond and respond and respond and back and forth and back. And then it just turns into this completely off topic, toxic, crazy conversation that is only out to hurt you, or you hurt them because you're reacting. And then it has nothing to do with the kid at all. It's just about you two hurting each other. So we have to learn how to have enough self-control to cut those conversations off, to block those numbers if we have to, and just to put it in the past and leave it there. Because that's how we break trauma bonds. There's cycles that have of generations of trauma and trauma and trauma and trauma that we carry on and carry on and carry on. And it ends with us, guys. It stops right here in 2025, right now. We are not carrying it into February. February is love month. I love me some Valentine's Day. Love month is my favorite, just because it's just, yes, we show each other all year long that we love each other, but I always do little special things for my kids and give them a little flower. And it's just an extra day to be extra special on the love. And I love it because I love love. As many times as I've had my heart broken, as many times as I've had crazy shit happen to me, and you guys know because I just shared a lot of it last episode, I just love love, man. I do. And I always, always, always will. And I think it's because growing up, I didn't really see that in my family dynamic. And because the relationship that I feel that my parents had was completely a trauma bond and Stockholm syndrome on my mom, like for my mom's point of view, I'm sure. Shit, I feared for her life as a child. And I know my sister did too. So I feel like my sister and I kind of formed a trauma bond with each other as siblings because we had to. That was the only way that we could survive the things that we were exposed to and going through at home, was to have that trauma bond with each other and to always protect each other. So we would go to school and nobody would mess with either one of us. Like, if you mess with my sister, I'm coming for you. Same thing. You mess with me, she's coming for you. Like, we had each other's back all the time, nonstop, whatever. But then on the way to school some mornings, like, you can ask my cousin. We used to give my cousin a ride to school in the mornings, right? We'd literally be like, Sean, hold the wheel. We'd be fist fighting each other on the way to school. But before we got there, we're like, all right, we're cool. We're good. All right. I got your back. You got mine. Like, it was crazy. But that's what we saw at home. You know, it's all we ever knew. And the trauma bond that siblings form is weird because it can be several different ways. It can be like the golden child, the black sheep. It can be the bully and the oppressor. It can be just several different types of scenarios for a trauma bond for siblings. And for my sister and I, like, I wouldn't say like it was like the golden child or the black sheep or whatever, but definitely like I was the worst one. And a lot of times now that I look back and I think about it, I feel like I was like a bully towards her sometimes because I would take out my anger and my frustration, and I would be like so exhausted so much from trying to protect her from seeing as much as I saw with my parents fighting and things like that. Like, go hide in my room, you know, like just trying to keep her away from it. I never wanted her to be hurt. And at the same time, when I would get pissed or, you know, angry or upset at her for any reason, I was like immediately reactive in that like a bully type of way because she was smaller than me. She was younger than me. I felt like maybe I'm really digging into it right now, guys. Like, I don't know. I haven't really ever looked at this like this. Like, my whole childhood has been trauma bond after trauma bond. My whole life. Let's go back. My whole life has been trauma bond after trauma bond after trauma bond. And I always looked at it like my sister will probably say the same thing. Like, she was such an asshole. And now that I look back and I'm like really digging into this, I'm like, I was a freaking asshole. Like, no wonder for a long time, like we didn't get along because unless we were at school. Because then at school we had to protect each other and we have to have each other's back. So to my sister, if you're listening, which I don't know if she is, my little sister, I'm sorry for that, man. Like, I am really sorry for that. Trauma really, really messed me up. And it took me 39 years to sit here and realize this and think about this and really like dig into it and try to understand it. But the same with my mom. Like, I feel like I had a trauma bond with her, but in a different type of way, because my sister and I always saw my mom being physically abused. And because of that, I think I became like in this protector mode over her too, where, you know, whenever fights would start and fights would break out with her and my dad, I always felt like I had to be the one to protect her. Like, I had to be the one to try to stop him. Like, you know, just leave her alone. Just let her go. You know, just stop. And then when it got to the point where it did finally stop and it's so bad, like, I'm the one trying to help her. Like, let me get some towels. Let me help you. Let me clean you up. Like, all the stuff, you know. And so it was just, that was a really, really crazy thing. And then I feel like she sometimes, because she was dealing with so much, went into that kind of not really bully mode, but she was so overwhelmed. She was so exhausted physically, emotionally, mentally, that she didn't really have it in her to deal with these two little kids. And she had a very short patience with us and would like oftentimes just be like, ready to, I'm gonna whip your ass. And so a lot of that was worse on me, I think, because I was the older one. I could handle it. I could deal with it. So, but then she loved me. I know she loved me. She told me she loved me. And the same thing, like I loved her. I told her I loved her. She was my mom and things like that. And so it was just like this trauma bond of a relationship. And now that I think about that, I'm like, you can really have a trauma bond with your kid. And I never realized that. And then that made me look at my own kids. And so for my younger ones, Kylie, my oldest daughter, she will always, always, always tell my kids, like, you guys are so lucky you don't have the mom that Hayden and I had. And they really are, because I was so unhealed. I was so young, so unhealed, so traumatized still. I had never dealt with trauma from my childhood. I had never dealt from trauma from my relationship with their dad. I had barely dealt with any kind of grief or loss from my loved ones that I lost at a young age dying. My grandfather, my friend Jess, my other grandfather, so both my grandfathers, my friend Jesse, lots of loss, my friend Ben. There was just like tons and tons of loss. And that was something that I didn't deal with. And so when my kids were born, I feel like I instantly formed a trauma bond with Kylie and with Hayden, because it became my life's goal and mission to not expose them to the things that I was exposed to when I was a kid. But at the same time, when I realized that I had gotten myself into a relationship that was exactly like the household I lived in as growing up as a kid, the relationship my parents had was the exact same relationship that I got myself into, and now I had two children in the mix, I became my mom. I became overwhelmed. I became exhausted. I became physically and emotionally broken because the person that I loved was destroying me every single day. And that's what a narcissist does. They don't just try to hurt you for a minute or for a second. They try to ruin your whole entire life. And they'll do anything they can to make sure that happens. And so a lot of the times when I was so overwhelmed, so frustrated, so irritated, I took my frustrations out on Kylie and Hayden because I had a short fuse. I had a super short fuse. I didn't know how to regulate my own emotions because no one had ever taught me that. I had been in fight or flight mode my whole entire life. And so here I was developing the same trauma bond with my girls that I had with my mom. And now that I think about that, like, it makes me feel like I kind of failed them because I could have done so much better for them than what I did. But I know everything happens for a reason, and we go through all these things in life, and it's all a part of the plan, and it's all a part of our journey and a part of our healing and a part of our testimony. But for sure, like, that molds you into who you are as an adult. These trauma bonds that you carry with you. And then you end up forming other trauma bonds with other people and other relationships. And you never really understand when you start having trauma bonds at a young age like that, what a healthy relationship is. So I think that's really what we need to focus on and look at now within ourselves. Like, I know I haven't prompted you guys to do journals like in forever, right? But I love my journal. I still write in my journal every day. So do a little bit of homework this week. Write that in your journals. What's the first trauma bond that you have ever noticed? What's the first trauma bond that you feel created? Not created. The first trauma bond that you feel I don't really know the word I'm looking for right now. How did we get here, right? So how did we get here right now? When did that trauma start for you? What was that trauma bond? Who was that trauma bond with? And then I want you to do something that I had to do this week that was really hard for me. Forgive yourself. Forgive yourself. Because a trauma bond is probably one of the hardest things to break in this entire world. And if you're still stuck in a trauma bond right now and you can't bring yourself to block that number, just go on right now while you're watching this. Go on and go to your contacts, block it, and delete it. That way you're not tempted to go in there and unblock it, right? Go on social media right now. Block their accounts. Block, 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 block. Delete it from your search bar. Whatever you need to do to cut all contact, no contact this month for the whole month of February. Whomever is causing you trauma, whomever you are still tied to through these trauma bonds, and who you have tried repeatedly to walk away from, cut it off. For 30 days, cut it off. I bet you won't want to talk to them anymore. And I'll bet you'll be a whole new person at the end of that 30 days. Because that is the first step. And then it's so freeing when you don't have to deal with the shit from that person every single day of your life. The text messages, the calls, the just constant worry of like, oh my God, when's it gonna come? Like just waiting for it to pop up every single day. No, we're not doing that anymore because you bye. You're in the past, where you belong, blocked, deleted. Not here anymore. Because we are not carrying those trauma bonds anymore. And if you are someone that is dealing with Stockholm Syndrome because you are in a relationship that you are terrified for your life to leave, please email me, podcastpocketfulofsunshine@gmail.com. We're going to figure this out. We're going to get you out of that situation no matter what. I have resources. I have contacts. I have just so many things that we can do. So many things that we can help you with. So please reach out to me because nobody deserves to live like that. It ruins all of our relationships that we have, including the relationship we have with ourselves and God. So that's one thing that I know, like when I was in these relationships, in these trauma bonds, you know how many years I spent praying to a God that I didn't believe in? And why didn't I? Why didn't I believe in him? Because he wasn't changing my situation. But I was a kid. So I was just sitting there waiting for God to change my situation. When in reality, God was using that situation to change me as an adult. So I could break that cycle and I could move forward and build a better life for myself and learn what healthy, happy relationships were. Unfortunately, I didn't do that in time to be able to help Hayden more and guide her more out of the relationship that she was in. And that's something that I have not, I wouldn't say I haven't forgiven myself for, but at the same time, I'm giving myself grace because I know even though You know, I would give her my opinion about her relationship. I would tell her to leave. I would tell her it was, toxic, this and that. I didn't then understand what trauma bonds were. And had I understood that and been able to tell her all of these things might have turned out a little bit differently. Maybe a whole lot differently. Maybe I wouldn't be celebrating her birthday in her memory this year. But here we are. I am turning all of this pain into a purpose. I'm still healing myself every single day. I really don't think that we're ever all fully healed. I don't see a way how I could ever fully be healed from this experience of losing my daughter. But I do know that by sharing my story, sharing my trauma, sharing my real truth with you guys every single week on here, that I'm changing people, I'm changing lives, I'm changing my own life, my own self. And that's making such a difference with my kids. And my soon-to-be grandchild deserves this. And most of all, Hayden deserved this. Like, she deserved this mom. Not the mom that her and Kylie had, right? There's just a lot of things I could say that, when we lose somebody we love like that, there's so many like should haves, would haves, could haves. And when Hayden was first killed, I really spent a lot of time on the should haves, would haves, could haves. And now I'm just spending all of my time focusing on couldn't, but now I can. And I know she would want that. And I know she would be so proud of me. Life's not fair. It's really not. We don't ask for these traumas. We don't ask for these trauma bonds. We don't ask for any of this stuff that we go through that hurts us. But sit back and think about who you would be if you didn't have these experiences. We don't know who we would be if we didn't have these experiences. We can guess, we can imagine. But then what does that do, right? So instead of focusing on the should haves, would haves, could haves, just focus on what you can do right now with that trauma, with that pain. Use it for something good. We've got to turn the pain into purpose. I've been saying that since Hayden was killed. There has to be a purpose in this pain. Like, it can't just be to hurt and to eat away and to just turn dark and black and evil and hate. No. That's not what we're doing. Because then we're no different than the people that cause these traumas to us, right? How do we recognize a trauma bond? That's a hard part too. So I feel like I was in all these relationships. I've had so many trauma bonds, like I just said, like at least a dozen. And some of them are good, but some of them are not. Like, two of my best friends that I have in this whole world, I have experienced the same types of traumas as these women, and they are amazing women, amazing mothers. One I have been friends with for 13 years. She's my heart, my soul, everything you can imagine. We've shared so much of the same trauma, and that has built our relationship even stronger. There is not a toxic part to our relationship. I love that woman with my whole entire heart. Kai Kai, I love you more than earth. Okay? And the other, I haven't known very long at all. And actually met her through a trauma bond relationship. And she has been such a blessing to me and a light to me. And she gave me this idea to talk about trauma bonds today. And I just love her with my whole heart and soul. And it's just a beautiful bond that we have and a beautiful relationship that I know that we're building. And so not all trauma bonds have to be something that's bad. And we only ever hear people talking about trauma bonds as something bad. Like, oh gosh, trauma bond, like it's a trauma bond, you have to get away from it, this and that. But we have to recognize healthy trauma bonds and unhealthy trauma bonds. An unhealthy trauma bond is when you're bonded to someone that continues to hurt you over and over and over. They know your triggers. They know what hurts you. They know your trauma. They know what you've been through, and they use that to hurt you. That is an unhealthy trauma bond, and that is what you need to block and walk away from. Somebody that's going to intentionally use your pain to hurt you. And remember what I said, we're turning our pain into purpose, right? We're not turning our pain into rage and anger and revenge. No. We're turning our pain into a purpose and making this world a better place, because the world that we live in right now is not a better place. It's full of hate and anger and greed and all the things. Just love. That's all. That's all we can do. There's enough hate. So on this podcast, in this forum, in this family, we love. So tomorrow is Hayden's birthday. She should be 20 years old. She's going to be 18 instead, forever 18. But she should be turning 20 tomorrow. So my kids and I are having a mental health day. We are going to paint some pottery because Hayden would have loved that. I still have this little pot. Look at this, guys. I just happened to be sitting right here next to it today. Hayden made this for me when she was in high school. A little mushroom pottery. How cute. She loved art. She made this for me, and I've kept it all these years, and I still have it. So the kids and I are going to do that tomorrow. We are going to go paint pottery for Hayden for her birthday. And then we are going to take all of the stuff that everyone sent to us from our Amazon birthday wish list for Hayden and take it to Inova Children's Hospital and donate it to the children's unit there. And that's going to be the most rewarding thing ever. We have 18 bags, individual bags that they can give to children. And then we have tons of games and toys and things they can use in their auxiliary room, to where, you know, if a kid needs a toy in their hospital room or what have you, they can take it in there. All of these toys that you all sent are easily sanitizable. They can be cleaned and reused, and it's just amazing. I will post a little video tomorrow for you guys here on the podcast page. And thank you so much if you donated to her birthday haul. It's going to be amazing. Wear your red and black tomorrow for Hayden, because those were her colors and she loved it. And just remember, if you've lost someone that you love so deeply that it feels like a piece of your soul has been ripped away from you, honor that person every single day. Keep talking about them. Don't let anyone forget them. Just do what you know their heart would want, right? Make a difference in this world with love, not with hate, not with greed, not with anger, not with revenge. That shit's exhausting. So we're breaking those cycles. We're breaking those chains. We're blocking those numbers and the emails and the cash apps. And we're moving on. That's what we're doing. And I'm here to help you guys in any way you need, even if you just need some advice. I'm by no means a medical professional. I will never try to give you medical advice. Always encourage you to seek therapy and, help if needed. I'm a huge proponent of therapy. I love my therapist. She's the best ever. But I can always offer things that have helped me get through certain situations. different things you can journal about that can help you heal and get through trauma. I can give you resources if you need a therapist, if you need anything. Like, I'll find a resource for you. Just email me and we'll figure it out together, because that's what I'm here for. That's why I started this podcast, is to help people. So please let me help you if you need it. Podcast pocketfulofsunshine@gmail.com, or you can reach out to me on the Facebook page, Podcast Pocketful of Sunshine. Send me a DM on there and I'll respond to you pretty quickly. So I love you guys, and I hope you've enjoyed this episode on trauma bonds and Stockholm Syndrome. I didn't know there was a difference between the two. Now I do. I could have talked on this episode for hours. Usually my episodes aren't this long anymore. They're, 20, 25 minutes at the most, but I really could have went into so much more detail on this episode, but my heart's not quite ready for that yet, because this was a lot for me. It was a huge eye opener for me, especially realizing that I had trauma bonds with my own kids, and my own sibling, my own mom, just crazy things. And then realizing that you can have healthy trauma bonds too, not just unhealthy. So, this was a lot. I got a lot of work to do. I got a lot of journaling to do. So I hope you guys take my advice and journal a little bit this week and take a look at your own trauma bonds, your own Stockholm Syndrome trauma relationships, and start working through them. Start healing from them. And I'm kind of rolling around the idea of a support group, guys. So I think that's something else I'm going to start soon too, over the next month or so. I'm going to have some type of support group that we can do. I don't know if it's going to be virtual. I don't know if it's going to be in person. I'm still trying to work out all the details and just praying on it and trying to figure out where God's going to take me with this. But I know it's going to be somewhere great. So I love you guys, and I will see you next week. Next week, we're going to be in February. February is love month. So love yourself most of all. And I'll see you guys soon. Bye.